Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. It was just a couple of months or so ago here. There were big doings on campus, and it was the installation of the new president of the NU system, the University of Nebraska system, and he is with us here today. We want to welcome Dr. James B. Milliken. Thank you for being with us. This is a big deal, getting a new president for any university system. You've worked in this system before. You worked at the University of North Carolina, where they have 16 campuses. Mm-hmm. You're back home. You're a home state boy.
That's right.
And people say that you had to leave to come back, in a sense.
Well, in higher education, often folks leave to come back. They move on in different levels of administrative responsibility. I happen to have 6 great years in North Carolina, which I think helped me when I came back to the University of Nebraska.
You mentioned a lot of things in your installation speech, which you have said before as you toured the state, to first assure, I think, Nebraskans that they will, the whole state will be kept in mind in your priority system. And you have since stated these priorities over and over again, but I think that you're coming at kind of in a good time and kind of not at a good time. The good time is that we're really through the big budget crunch we had because of the economy. But in the future, there's going to be a lot of competition for the dollars that you want to build the university. So when you came back, are you sure you wanted to do that? I mean, you've got you put a lot on your plate yourself, too.
Yeah. I think it's a great time for the University of Nebraska and the state of Nebraska, and I'm fortunate to be here now. As you mentioned, I missed what I hope are the worst of the budget difficulties in the last few years.
At least all the external pressures sort of on the budget.
The national economy created state fiscal pressures across this country, and public higher education suffered not just in Nebraska, but in almost every state. And
I'm sure where you were in North Carolina that they experienced similar things. I don't think most university systems could dodge the bullet.
No, there were tight budget years in North Carolina, but there were also some pretty remarkable investments that they made in the University of North Carolina during that same period of time. They had a bond issue on the ballot where 75% of the people in the state voted for several $1 billion for capital construction across the state for the university. So the states are in different places across the country, but everybody had some difficulty.
You're in a state, once again, that you love. I know you're really tied emotionally to this state, but you are in a state where the university system, in addition to having those budget problems, and it had, were you here earlier when we had the farm crisis, mm-hmm. or did you sort of escape that? We've had those kinds of problems, but we've also had what every state's had, and universities are considered to be sort of discretionary spending. I mean, you have things you have to spend money on in a state, and then they kind of take care of those and fight over those, and then they get to state colleges and the universities, and you're going to really be competing in the future for those dollars.
Well, that's true, and I think we have some real decisions to make in this state, and in fact, every state does. I've heard the governor talk about it. I've heard the chairman of the Appropriations Committee talk about it in the legislature. We have to get our arms around what we call non-discretionary spending in this state if we want to continue to make investments in what we call discretionary spending. If we allow the current trends for non-discretionary spending to continue at the pace they're on, within 10 years there will be zero left for the University of Nebraska or any other discretionary items in the state's budget. And that is not a strategy that's good for the future of the state of Nebraska.
And maybe you should explain what we mean by discretionary. You look at the mandated things like K through 12.
K through 12 is in most states constitutionally required. A free public education for every child in a certain age qualifies. Medicaid spending, where they're matching the federal, paying back the federal government for expenditures. There are certain things that are required by law, either federal law, state constitution. The University of Nebraska, in my view, public higher education is one of the things that a state must invest in to be successful, but it's not required by the Constitution or federal law.
But your job and what you've chosen by coming back here, and I think from your speeches, is that you feel you can make the case and you can bring more people on board and more financial interests on board with the help of the legislature to I guess, like we're trying to broaden the tax base all the time, to sort of broaden the financial input base to the university.
Well, my job, in my view in part, is to convince Nebraskans and the leadership of this state that an investment in the university is essential for the future of the state of Nebraska. I'm a fourth-generation Nebraskan, so I come to this job probably unlike most university presidents. I'm coming back to my state, and I start with a love of Nebraska and a concern for the state of Nebraska. Being the president of the university probably comes second to me. First is a love for the state of Nebraska, and my view that we need to take some steps, we need to put some strategies in place that ensure the long-term success of the state of Nebraska and a quality of life for my children who are growing up in Nebraska now and for their children.
The interesting thing is we have a lot of good things going for us that make it a pretty good case to make. And one is that we have a higher than average number of high school graduates, the rate of graduation in this state. But we also have, I think, a relatively lower number that go on to college and finish college. And then I also see statistics about we're losing young people in this state. And just if you just played with those, you can see that unless some of those numbers change, we're going to continue to lose more of our best and our brightest, because the college students that we do get through are going to have fewer jobs brought in by a job base. I mean, we're an important commodity, people, and our young people are probably our most important commodity.
Nebraska's population is aging, it's graying.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things we have to make sure is that we have younger people, talented, educated people who stay in the state, who come to the state to make their home, to employ other folks, to raise their families. We need to make sure we have a talent base, an educated workforce in this state that'll support the needs of the state of Nebraska.
In the past, I think a lot of us who said, oh, we want these companies to come to Nebraska and this. And we knew that what they were looking for, and this is years ago, even big manufacturing operations need a talented, well-educated workforce. But we thought that of the labor. It's just labor. We thought, well, they need labor. Well, it's not that they need the lower end of the trade, scheme. It's they need bright, educated, specialized, and innovative workforce.
In a global economy where free trade is the rule, we cannot compete successfully on the basis of low-skill, high-wage jobs. Low-skill, high-wage jobs are going away. No state is going to be able to compete on that basis. We need to compete on the basis of being smarter, on the basis of being able to innovate better and increase our productivity because of that level of innovation. That's the only way the United States and Nebraska will be able to compete effectively with the rest of the world.
I fear as a citizen, not as a reporter, but as I fear as a citizen as I watch this, and I'm in total agreement, and I think thinking people are in agreement with what you just said. However, if we wait too long, then we lose out on the competition, not just to the world, but to the other states who may have moved ahead in the things you want to move ahead, and we cannot get behind even our peers in this country.
Well, we are competing with other states, but it's as likely in 2005 that we're competing with China and India as Kansas and Iowa. In a global economy where we're outsourcing low-skill jobs, where they're going to work for low wages, our competitive advantage in the state of Nebraska and in this country has to be the talent of our citizens. And we have to educate them. And we have to have a focus by state government, by the federal government, by education on innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity, talent.
And so you've already staked out some areas where we need to start moving, and it's a chicken and an egg thing. Do we, you know, try to push through on the end of getting more students into college, or do we get the faculty and the resources and rejuvenate some of our facilities and build new ones to then help bring them up? So are you doing all of those things?
Well, you have to do all those things.
Yeah.
And the basic building block, I think, the place to start, and what I've been talking about since I've been in Nebraska, is building the level of talent of our workforce, of taking advantage of the talent of Nebraskans. And first and foremost, that means increasing the number of Nebraskans that go on from high school to college and that complete college in a timely period.
This is a complex issue. There's not
it is a
one
complex
answer
issue.
to that.
It is a complex issue, and there are a number of facets to increasing strategies to increase the college going rate. You mentioned the high school graduation rates. We're about 5th in the nation, I think, in terms of high school graduation. We drop off and going on to college, and we have a population, according to the 2000 census, of adults with a 4-year high school degree that is below the national average. That is not an effective way to compete in a knowledge-based, technology-based economy.
So one of the things even when you were interviewing for this job and going around from campus to campus, talking to faculty, one of the things you talk about it since, is accessibility, the attainability
Right.
of and access, on how you can get on the on-ramp.
Right.
And it involves perhaps more help with people on the tuition end. We see something now that's kind of a political hot potato, but allowing our immigrants who have been living here for a certain time but don't have maybe legal status to have resident tuition. There are some other things you've talked about, more scholarship money.
Right. All of them.
But
They're all necessary. I would say that we need to increase the percentage of our Nebraska high school students that go on to college, and there are a couple ways to do that. One is we need to push information down to a lower level. We need to make sure that no later than middle school do children and their parents have an idea of what the real costs are of education and how you can meet those costs, what scholarships are available, what financial aid federally, from the state, from the institution. Second, we need to make sure that they understand what the academic preparation is. So it's financial and it's academic. We need to make sure that when they are ready to leave high school, that they meet the minimum course requirements at the university, that they're prepared for a university education, whether it's at the University of Nebraska or elsewhere.
more specifically, do we need more work in certain areas like math and science?
You've been listening to Bill Gates. We absolutely need more work in math and science. I met with a group of about 20 K-12 superintendents this morning. This is one of the things we talked about. In the 4th grade, Americans are in the top quartile in math and science scores, and by the time they leave high school, they're down near the bottom.
And gee, what would be the 2 areas that help supply the brains, the workforce, and the creativity for this technological society?
Yeah, I'm on a real kick about this. We need more kids coming out of high schools who want to study math, science, and engineering, and we need to produce more engineers and scientists out of our universities. I met with a group at a high school the other day and asked how many were going to major in math and science and engineering, and not one person raised their hand. This is a serious problem. South Korea, a country that is 1/6 the size of the United States, graduates as many engineers as we do. China graduates over 4 times the number of engineers that the United States does. This economy, this knowledge, technology-based economy in the 21st century is going to be run on science, math, engineering, and related fields.
The irony is that when you see things, and I'm just going by the news because I don't have time to read all the educational journals, and I don't know if I'd understand them if I did, but the irony is that when you get graduate students in this country, that they surpass some of those other graduates in the other parts of the world in programming, other scientific creativity and application things. So I mean, we have a good, as it were, gene pool. I'm not making any comments about it, but I mean, we have students who are able, have the resources if they get the schooling, and we have faculty that's capable of teaching it. And we just need to get that sort of flowing better, and you want to bring better faculty in here, which is the other side of the chicken and the egg.
Right now, other countries, many other countries, are doing a better job than the United States is doing in convincing kids in the school systems that there is value, that there's a premium to a rigorous course of study and to pursuing education, undergraduate and graduate level education in the sciences, in math and in engineering. I think we need to do a better job of convincing kids in our schools that there's real opportunity for them and that they can make a great living, they can have the kind of life that they want to have, and it's important for them to continue taking math and science throughout their school career.
I'm going to deviate just for a minute from sort of your priorities. You've got kids. I see a number of young junior high and high schoolers that are pushed from the time to be superstars at whatever they are. And they also have to be multi-talented and multifaceted and be able to skate and do ballet and play soccer. And I often worry that in all that activity shuffle, that there are students that if there was more emphasis put on the academics, but not ramming it down their throats that you have to be a superstar. And you talked about rigorous, more of the sort of the academy approach and things, and where they live and breathe it, but it's not necessarily externally beaten into them. You have to be a superstar. It's because they want to. They've got teachers that are exciting them, and they are excited about their own abilities.
Right. And this is not.
I mean,
by
what
the
do you
way,
think when you've got kids, and you must think oftentimes with your wife, how are we going to approach this?
Well, it's true that it is a balance because there are many demands on their time, whether it's athletics, friends, music,
all those things that we think build well-balanced kids.
Make kids well-rounded. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I want to make clear that this is not I'm not assigning the responsibility for this task of producing math and science ready students and a rigorous course of study to K-12. I'm not assigning the blame or responsibility. This is something that all of the, first of all, society owns it, and second of all, the entire education spectrum owns it. The university produces many of the teachers in this state, and so we all own some of the responsibility, and we all own a share of how we're going to meet the challenge that faces us.
Well, I know the governor and I think Senator Rakes and others peripherally are interested in what they're calling a P16 approach, pre-kindergarten through 4 years of post-secondary. Is this good that they're looking
Absolutely.
At this sort of globally rather than just, here's pre, and this is...
Yeah. No, I think it is. I think we need to look at the education continuum, and we also need to involve in this effort. I'm delighted the governor is taking a leadership role in this.
Another Fremont boy.
Exactly. But I'm delighted that he's taken a leadership role in this, and Senator Rakes, the chairman of the Education Committee. Doug Christensen, the superintendent, commissioner of education, and I have met with them talking about how we can work together, K-12, university, state government. We also need to involve business. We need to make sure that the private sector leadership in the state is committed and working with the folks in K-12 and university education. We need to know what their requirements are. We need to have their support then also in making sure that we're addressing the needs of the workforce and that we have the resources available to do that effectively.
Do you think, given your vantage point at this point in your tenure, that we need to relook at allocation of assets and specialties and whatever, and all of post-secondary education? We're looking now at Wayne State and Northeast Community College with a memorandum of understanding to sort of build a new little campus up in South Sioux City to, kind of maybe seamlessly move them through community college into a 4-year degree. I'm thinking of how the enrollment in some of our colleges is not taking a dip now, but we've had some tough economic times, and it's it's not been the steady increment in the last few years that we'd like to see increases. So do we need to also look at all of post-secondary and see who, how can we all I don't know. Do we?
Yes.
It seems to be a little fragmented
Yes.
right now.
No, we do. We have a coordinating commission for public higher education in this state, which is created, as I understand it, to look at all of public higher education, community college, state college, university system. That is, of course, an issue. I mean, one of the things at the University of Nebraska includes 4 campuses, so we can look at how we deploy assets, where we have redundancies, where we want to focus among those 4 campuses. But beyond that, we are not responsible and, in fact, have no authority.
Right.
So beyond that, the responsibility lies with the coordinating commission, the governor, and the legislature.
I guess if
But
we're looking through at I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right.
For all the way from pre-kindergarten through what they're teaching on up, that maybe we have to look at ourselves too.
You're exactly right. All I was going to say is that some body does need to be looking at all of higher education in the state. We can't just approach this piecemeal, and we need to be focused on all of the education continuum. So we need participants from every sector.
You've got some legislation in the hopper, as they say in Lincoln, that would help you lure top rate, not that we don't have many top rate faculty, but
Right.
more top rate faculty members. You might want to explain what it is a little and why you think this is going to help bring more
Right.
private funds into the mix.
Well, a university, any university, is only as good as its faculty. And the difference between mediocre and a very high quality institution is the quality of the faculty. Now, as you mentioned, we have some great faculty at the University of Nebraska on all 4 campuses now. And in the past few years, we've recruited some extraordinary new faculty because of funding we had available, private funding, which allowed us to endow a chair and bring people from the University of Michigan, University of Colorado, Yale, Cornell, just to name a few with whom I've met in the past few weeks, who have come to the University of Nebraska within the past couple of years because we were able to attract them with a distinguished chair. Many states, 23 states, have programs of public funds and private funds being matched for one purpose or another, distinguished chairs for faculty, scholarships, facilities. Nebraska doesn't have that. In fact, in 1984, they overwhelmingly passed a distinguished professor bill, and it was vetoed by my friend Bob Carey, who's now president of the university. I'm sure he wouldn't do that again. But the distinguished professor bill that we have now would provide a state match for privately raised dollars to create a chair to bring some of the best faculty in the country.
In other words, sort of leveraging state money, or you can turn it around, leveraging private money and making the private people feel the state's making an investment too.
In my mind, it's a win-win because the state says we have a dollar available that if you, the private sector, will invest your own dollars in this. So take an example. ConAgra wants to have a new professorship for food science that is important to them. So they say, well, we'll put up our funds to hire the best person in the country. And then the state of Nebraska matches that. We are able to go out and recruit one of the best food scientists in the world to come to the University of Nebraska. It's a win-win. The private sector is speaking with their dollars. The state is investing where it knows there's a strong interest in the state of Nebraska and an economic impact in the state of Nebraska.
Now, the university will always retain sort of, keep the lack of influence. I mean, they keep their academic sort of independence, though, with those kinds of things. Is that generally the...
Oh, absolutely. The University of Nebraska, like almost every other university in the country now, raises private funds from individuals or corporations or foundations.
We hope.
Absolutely, and we've had some very good success with that. But there are no strings attached to those gifts. They're made because people are committed to the efforts at the university.
From what I understand, it looks like funding from the legislature this year will be better than it's been in a long time because many of the economic pressures that we talked about, we're not dealing with so many of them this year. It looks like that, from what I'm hearing, that at least a couple of our university institutions, we have 4 of them in the state, that they will be brought up to the midpoint of their peer groups. But that isn't necessarily true. Faculty salaries are really important. You can't just add a couple of special professorships and endowed chairs here and there.
Oh, and I've made it clear to the faculty at the University of Nebraska with whom I've spoken that we value their contribution. Our highest priority in the legislature is to see that there is adequate funding for faculty salaries throughout the University of Nebraska. We need to reward the people who are here, who are making outstanding contributions, and who frankly during the last few years of very difficult budget times have not seen much of an increase. So we're very positive. The preliminary recommendations from the Appropriations Committee are quite positive. The governor's recommendations for the budget that he put forward, or I should say they put forward, are the highest that they've been in years. So we think things look good. There are always needs that won't be met. There are always choices that have to be made, and that's it's not a bad thing that we make choices.
Well, as a new president of the system, you have a little bit of breathing room to help work on some of those other things that you talked about, rallying private industry, helping find their needs, getting proper matches of their needs and what we're teaching. So you've got a little time. You're not having a crisis right now.
Right. It's important to note, too, that while the state provides a very significant amount of support for the University of Nebraska, that our university, like those around the country, is diversifying its revenues pretty dramatically. Over the last 10 years, our state general fund support of the university has gone up about 30% over 10 years. During that same period, private support has gone up about 200%, and federal research support for research activities at the university has gone up about 150%. So we are pretty significantly increasing the resources from other sources besides state general fund tax dollars.
I know that UNO has a strategic planning coming up next month, and you're going to actually kind of sit in on some of that. I know you're not unhappy with the way that the four campuses, their strengths are and what they're doing, but do you plan to be a little more active in this kind of thing? Not pushy, but active.
I plan to be active, and I think it's important to do the kind of thing I was asked to do with UNO's planning, which is participate in a group to talk about how the entire university, and UNO in particular, can serve the state of Nebraska better, serve the Omaha community and the entire state. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my ideas. Chancellor Belk and her team will do the actual planning, but I'm going to try to put a stake out in the ground for them about some aspirations I have for UNO and for the entire University of Nebraska.
Well, I hope you have a little bit of a honeymoon period before things get really tight again. I want to thank you so much, James B. Milliken, President of the University of Nebraska System, for being with us. We'll see how it goes. All right?
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
And thanks for joining us this week on Consider This.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.